Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Inner Fire Climbing Podcast. That felt good to say. If you don't know me, my name is Jesse Firestone. I'm a climber and climbing coach. I live in Central Washington. I've been climbing for about 18 years. In that time, I've been a boulderer, been a sport climber. I've developed boulders and bolted sport climbs. I've been a route setter. I've climbed up to E12 or 13C or D, depending on who you ask. I've also flashed V10. Can't say that I have any exciting on-site accolades. That's something I'd like to work on a little more in the next few years. I've also coached over 1,000 climbers. In 2024, I did 500 plus hours of consults. I wrote over 2,500 weeks of training last year. And I also released a series of technical and tactical lectures that summarized my coaching philosophy called The Principles of Problem Solving. You can find that over at camp4humanperformance.com. And for a few years there, I was determined not to start a podcast, but here we are, I did it, and I want to talk about why. There's no intro music, there's no logo. That's kind of the way I do things. I sort of jump into something and try to figure out how to do a good job at it before I worry about the aesthetics of it. That's what I did with my coaching. It's what I've always done with my climbing and my other pursuits. But there were other things that prevented me from getting into podcasting. There were already a lot of climbing podcasts, even a few years ago. Podcasting seemed like a lot of work. I didn't really want to put a ton of effort into marketing a podcast and being palatable to a wide audience. But I've learned quite a lot over my years being a coach and working on social media, and I think a lot of these things are not as big of obstacles as I feared at first. The biggest reason I'm starting a podcast now is I think it'll just be more efficient for me to reach a lot of people. It's very hard to get a good message across in an Instagram post or a reel. There's very little context for these posts. The back and forth, if there is one, frequently dissolves into name calling and logical fallacies. And frankly, it's exhausting to create content for a system that's opaque to the creator in terms of who gets to see what. It's hard to reach people with a podcast, but I know that once they find the show, I don't need to worry about them listening to an episode. They can just listen to the whole episode. Same thing is not true on a lot of other platforms. And there are a lot of podcasts out there, but that's actually become a bit of a motivator for me. There's a lot of Instagram profiles too, and I never let that stop me from contributing on Instagram. It's kind of ironic maybe that I was worried about not being able to stand out back when there were only a handful of climbing shows. Now that there's so many shows, I'm not really worried about standing out at all. I do plan to have guests on the show, some that haven't been on other shows so much, voices and characters in the community that might need to be lifted up more. People who have a lot to offer in terms of their sport performance and fulfillment and identity. I am open to suggestions on that front if you have someone you think it would be interesting for me to talk to. Another big reason I'm starting a podcast is I realized I don't need to try to please anyone specifically, and I don't need to try to please everyone. I don't need to be widely palatable or really do any marketing at all if I don't want to, just like with my other social media. I can just be myself, and if 30 people listen to an episode, great. If 3,000 people listen to an episode, that's great. Giving 30 people some insight all at once is still a pretty good use of my time if it's good insight, especially compared to talking to one person in a consult. And if that one person wants more detail, I can still talk to them in a consult. So nothing's really lost there. When I do have guests on that have been on other shows, I can selfishly ask them the questions that I want to ask, which is fun. For instance, I am not very interested in how athletes train their fingers for specific routes or boulders. In general, I find professional climbers are outliers, and they tend to be the worst people to ask about training. Many of them would have gotten similar results to the results they've gotten with a huge variety of training modes. I'm way more interested in why an athlete chooses an objective, what they do to get themselves in the zone to try that objective every day, how they handle themselves emotionally and logistically, what decisions seem like they've been most important to their success, how their career has progressed, big picture things like that. Have a format in mind that I want to use with athletes who I respect and look up to, Maybe they've been on other podcasts, but I have some ideas for how to get into stuff that they haven't talked about elsewhere. So I suspect the Inner Fire podcast will have a distinct lack of specific training recommendations, and it'll be a lot more abstract, although I'm sure there'll be sets and reps from time to time. I will be doing solo episodes too. I want to be able to go into greater depth on subjects that people are curious about without being worried about losing people's attention. When I do an AMA on Instagram, I get positive feedback from people, especially those who ask the questions, but I also tend to lose followers on those days, I think because of the sheer number of stories. Even if somebody likes my content, they don't want to see 30 stories of it in a row. An AMA podcast is a bit more deliberate for someone to consume, but I also want to timestamp the questions. And by doing that, I'll be able to create a master list of questions on my Patreon that refers back to all the questions in all the AMA shows, so people can go back and use that as a permanent resource, kind of like a JFire FAQ library. There are other abstract reasons that I'm starting a podcast too. It's something different for me. It's a new challenge for me to take on, and it's something that can grow with me independent of platform and independent of what's going on in my climbing. I feel that my business is tied to Instagram in a way that is disconcerting with some of their recent political moves, even things like them suddenly changing the grid ratio so my profile looks like ass. It's a minor thing, but it's a subtle reminder that I just have a train and they control the rails. I just participate. And while I'll still be tied to platforms like Instagram to make a podcast, I have a lot more control here. That's all for now. I'll leave you with a bit of poetry because I have that control. I know, very first episode. I'm already reading fucking poetry. But it'll help the sign-off make a little sense. Not sure if this is originally where the sign-off comes from. But it's an excerpt from Fanny Kemble, and I don't think it has a name. A sacred burden is this life ye bear. Look on it, lift it, bear it solemnly. Stand up and walk beneath it steadfastly. Fail not for sorrow, falter not for sin, but onward, upward, till the goal you win. Thanks for listening. Until next time, onward and upward.